If crowds make you uncomfortable, it's not social anxiety. It's something your brain learned to do long before you understood it. You don't walk into a crowded place and panic. That's not your pattern. It's quieter than that, harder to notice. You step in, look around, and within seconds, something inside you shifts. Nothing dramatic happens. No one says anything. No one looks at you strangely. Nothing actually goes wrong. But still, you don't feel right. Your body is there, but your presence starts fading. You're standing in the middle of people, and somehow you feel slightly disconnected. So you explain it the easiest way you can. I just don't like crowds. But that explanation never fully fits. Because part of you knows that's not the full story. If you truly didn't like crowds, you wouldn't keep trying. You wouldn't say yes to plans. And then feel different when you arrive. You wouldn't imagine enjoying it before actually stepping into it. There's a gap between expectation and reality. You want connection. You're open to it. You don't avoid people. But the moment the environment becomes intense, something inside you pulls back. Not out of fear, out of discomfort you can't fully explain. And that's where things start to get interesting. Because this isn't about crowds. It's about what your brain does when everything starts happening at once. In calm environments, you function differently. You observe more. You pick up on details others miss. You understand people without needing many words. There's clarity in how you experience things. But in crowded spaces, that clarity disappears. Voices overlap, movements increase, energy stacks from every direction, and your brain doesn't filter it out. It tries to process it, all of it. That's the moment the shift happens. Not anxiety, overload. Psychology refers to this as high sensitivity. Not in the emotional sense people assume, but in the way your brain processes information. You don't just see what's happening, you absorb it. More input, more signals, more awareness, and in the right environment, that's a strength. It makes you perceptive, present, deeply aware. But in a crowded environment, that same ability turns into pressure because your brain is receiving more than it can comfortably handle. So it responds the only way it knows how. It creates distance, not physically at first, internally. You disengage slightly. Your responses shorten. Your attention starts pulling inward. And eventually, you feel the need to step away. Not dramatically, not urgently, just quietly. And this is where most people misunderstand themselves. They assume something is wrong. They label it quickly. I'm awkward. I'm antisocial. I don't fit in. But those labels don't actually explain the experience, because the truth is more precise than that. You're not avoiding people. You're managing your capacity. And there's a difference. Psychologist Carl Jung touched on this idea in a different way. He suggested that some people don't lose energy because of social interaction itself. They lose it because of intensity. That's why you can enjoy one-on-one conversations, or small groups, or calm environments, but struggle in large, crowded spaces. It's not about connection. It's about volume. And understanding that alone changes how you see yourself. But this goes deeper, and this is where it stops being about crowds and starts being about your past. Because the way your mind reacts right now wasn't created today. At some point in your life, being aware helped you. Maybe you grew up in an environment where you had to read people carefully. Maybe you learned to notice tone, mood, and subtle changes. Maybe staying mentally alert gave you an advantage, so your brain adapted. It became faster, more observant, more responsive to small signals, and that system stayed active. Now, years later, it still works the same way, except the environment has changed. What once helped you in controlled situations now activates in crowded ones. So when you walk into a busy space, your brain doesn't relax. It scans, it tracks faces, energy shifts, small reactions, not consciously, automatically, and that creates a problem. Because in smaller environments, this gives you control. You can understand what's happening. You can keep up. You can stay present. But in crowds, there's too much happening to track. Too many signals, too many variables. And your brain doesn't like losing clarity. So it does something protective. It reduces exposure. You step back. You disengage. You create internal distance. Not because you're afraid, but because your system is overloaded. And this is where the internal conflict begins. Because while your brain is pulling away, another part of you still wants connection. You don't want isolation. You don't want distance. You want something very specific. You want connection that feels real, not loud, not scattered, not overwhelming, but focused, clear, present, and most crowded environments don't offer that. So you feel out of place, not because you don't belong, but because the environment doesn't match how your mind works. And once you see that clearly, something shifts. You stop trying to force yourself into spaces that drain you. You stop comparing your energy to people who function differently. You stop labeling yourself as the problem. Instead, you start adjusting your environment. You choose smaller settings, more intentional conversations, spaces where you can actually stay engaged. And in those environments, everything changes. You don't feel overwhelmed, you feel present. You don't feel disconnected, you feel involved. You don't feel like you need to leave, you feel like you can stay. And that's the version of you most people never get to see because it doesn't appear in crowds. It appears in the right conditions. So the next time you feel that shift, when you step into a crowded space, pause for a moment. Don't judge it. Don't label it. Understand it. Because that reaction isn't random. It's your brain doing exactly what it was trained to do. Protect your clarity, manage your input, maintain your balance. And once you stop fighting that, you stop feeling like something is wrong with you. You start realizing something important. You were never bad with crowds. You were just never meant to disappear inside them. You were meant to experience things differently, more deeply, more intentionally. And when you align your environment with that truth, everything becomes easier, not louder, not bigger, but clearer. And that clarity is what finally makes you feel at peace, not because you changed who you are, but because you understood it.